Welcome to the third session in track 1 of Leadership in Healthcare Crisis. In this session, we'll be having a conversation on emotional intelligence as it relates to leadership. I'm Dr. Paula Seth, and I'll be joined by my co-moderator, Dr. Robert Maximos, and I'm pleased to introduce our speaker, Eric Rittmeyer. Eric is a former U.S. Marine and the author of The Emotional Marine. He is an expert in the fields of mental toughness and emotional intelligence. Eric speaks across the country, teaching professionals and executives about the limits on decision-making brought on by fear and emotion. Today, Eric will be discussing emotional intelligence as it relates to leadership in crisis situations and the tools that we all can use to further develop our own strengths in EI. Subsequent to the presentation, we'll continue with a panel discussion, bringing in Ms. Christina Berman and Dr. Theodore Pufford. We welcome comments and questions. Please, if you can post your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll address those with Eric as well at the end of the session. Eric, thanks for joining us today. Before jumping into your presentation, could you please start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background and how you came to be interested in emotional intelligence in leadership?
Yeah, thank you, Paul. First off, thank you for the invite. I'm absolutely honored to be speaking to you guys. This is so amazing. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, emotional intelligence for me, it all started back in my days of the Marine Corps. It's just something where I learned that there was things about people that just didn't click. You know, I'd meet people and I'd be like, what is it about this person I really like? What is it about that person I really don't like? And the more I started to put stuff together and started to study and started the research, I started to realize there's this missing component. You have this IQ, which you obviously go to school and learn, and the smarter you are, the better grades you get, the better school you get, better job you get. But then there's this other component, emotional intelligence. I became infatuated with it. I took my Marine Corps training, I took my sales training, I put it together, and I come up with mental toughness expert. And that's what I'm here to talk to you guys about: mental toughness and emotional intelligence. Lost sound on you, Paula. Can you hear me? Paula, we lost you.
Yep, we don't hear you, Paula.
Sorry about that. Tammy, are you able to pull up the slides?
Yes, I am. Give me 1 second. I'll pull it up for you.
Thank you. It's giving me some error, so I thank you.
Yes.
That's okay. I'll go ahead and get started with it. So basically, what emotional intelligence is all about, guys, emotional intelligence, I think what a lot of people don't understand is IQ and EQ. These are two things that, again, we go through school, we memorize, regurgitate. That's IQ. People don't understand the EQ portion of it. And here's the thing. We're emotional creatures. We are wired to feel first and think later. Every single thing we do revolves around an emotion. We receive no training on this. So the problem is we get pushed through school to memorize all these things. Then we get thrown out into the workforce, regardless of the field that you're in. And we're taught to just suppress the emotion, to just turn it off. It's impossible. We can't do that. So what happens? We have this generation now of people who have not been taught any type of emotional vocabulary. They're incapable of expressing emotion any way other than getting upset, getting angry. Emotional intelligence, mental toughness is all about taking control of the emotion. It's not trying to eliminate it. It's not trying to turn it off. It's learning to control it. In your field, especially in the medical field, you guys are basically, when I train people in sales, like if they mess up, if they don't do something correctly, or if they get too emotional, they lose sales. In your line of work, you lose lives. Okay, my wife back in 2013 suffered from a subarachnoid hemorrhage, a ruptured brain aneurysm. I found her in the front seat of my car dying. We were airlifted. Fortunately, I live in Baltimore, so I'm very close to some amazing hospitals. I was airlifted down to Johns Hopkins Bayview. My wife went in for 10 hours of brain surgery. I can remember like yesterday, this is 7 years ago, I can remember like yesterday, the doctor, the neurosurgeon, Dr. Colby was his name. I can remember him coming in and sitting down with me. I'm signing papers, and I looked in his eyes, and I could see his emotion. I could feel him. He was like, Eric, I just want you to know I'm going to do everything I possibly can to save your wife's life. And I can remember I felt so secure in that moment because I felt like he felt my pain. It was the craziest thing ever. He was connecting with me. And that's what's missing, guys. And it's not just in your field and any other field. Emotional intelligence is an absolutely critical skill. Is it important in times of crisis? 100% it is. Marine Corps training. Okay, it's funny, as I got prepared for this presentation, there are so many similarities between military and the medical field. And I think that's why so many veterans do so well in the medical field. You perform under pressure. Okay, there's a sense of absolute fight or flight. In every situation you're in, you're dealing life or death. That is where mental toughness comes into play. Mental toughness and emotional intelligence is taking control of your emotions and performing under pressure. I use the analogy that professional football players, I love to use that. Professional football players, field goal kickers, I'm infatuated with them. In practice, they will sit out there and kick 25-yard field goals all day long. They'll make 99 out of 100 of them all day long. They'll make them laces in, laces out, wind blowing here, wind blowing there, it doesn't matter. Put them on the field with 1 second left on the clock, down by 2 points. Why do they miss the field goal? They miss the field goal because of what they're thinking, what's going through their mind. We receive no training on this, guys. When we learn about emotions, when we learn that everybody's emotionally driven, we know there's another component. In your field especially, it's critically important to be able to connect with people. Just like military, improvise, adapt, overcome. In the medical field, that's what you're taught, right? Improvise, adapt, and overcome. When you're faced with an issue, you improvise, adapt, overcome. There's an emotional component that comes into this as well. You have to learn that people are emotional creatures. We're all wired the same exact way. And I state like this: medicine is a science, emotion is an art. There needs to be a commingling of those two. How that happens is the difficult thing. It's what I'm here to talk to you about today. If we can go through the slides here, I think that the one with my dots, I believe it's going to be the next slide here. So what I do is I give you guys a visual for, I call it my dots. This should be the next slide, I believe. One more. I give it my dots. I talk about my dots. So this is these are the thoughts inside of everyone's head, okay? These dots represent beliefs that we all have. Each dot stands for something. Each dot is a belief we have about love, about work, about our spouse, about religion. These beliefs have been planted in our head years and years and years ago by someone, a teacher, by a family member. Those dots have been in place and they represent what we feel about certain things. Okay, someone like me comes along, a mental toughness person. I'm all about objective reality. I'm all about critical thinking questions. So I come along and I start jumbling up these dots, okay? So I start taking one of the dots and moving them and jumbling this one up and jumbling that one up. Do you know what happens when people start to touch those dots? Like when I start questioning beliefs you have, and remember guys, these are normally beliefs that are tied to nothing more than an emotion. These are beliefs that you've had in the back of your brain for probably years and 10, 20, 30 years that are tied to no fact. The issue is when I come along and start to question those beliefs, when I start to jumble up those dots, you get angry. You get what I refer to as drunken emotion. I call it drunken emotion. You become so intoxicated in emotion that you're incapable of thinking logically. Logic and emotion are inversely related. So as you become more emotional, you become less logical, and vice versa. In your field, in the medical field especially, if you're operating in 99% emotion and 1% logic, lives are lost. Very rarely does anyone functioning from an emotional state of mind provide any benefit, especially in business. Now, if we're talking about outside of business, I think that's the other thing that I was really so infatuated with when it came to mental toughness and emotional intelligence, is the fact that every single thing we do revolves around our emotions. Everything we do, guys, the majority of the decisions that we make are based off of an emotion, a feeling, and then we just try to find logic to back it up. If emotion's that powerful, why do we not receive more training on that? Okay, why do our schools not teach that? Why do our schools not teach children that it's okay to feel an emotion? Every emotion that you feel is okay. It's how you react to that emotion that we have to pay attention to. We get no training on that. That is what emotional intelligence is all about. And it still boggles my mind that as a society, no one has grasped this and said, you know what? Every field needs it, especially the medical field. And again, as I'm preparing for this, it's just the similarities, the parallels that I see between military and the medical field. It's amazing to me. You're dealing with patients, you're dealing with families, you're dealing with people that are way intoxicated in emotion. How do you balance those two? How do you balance when you walk out of a life or death situation and flip that switch to now turn into a compassionate, caring, you go in that operating room or whatever you do, you have one goal. And I remember the neurosurgeon telling me that, Dr. Colby, he's like, my objective is to save lives. That's what I'm here to do. So it's crazy to me that we don't receive training on this. The jumbling of dots, guys, I'm here to jumble up those dots. Obviously, we have a very short period of time, but in your life, the takeaway on this slide is, how many beliefs do you have in your mind right now that are tied to nothing more than a feel-good, than an emotion? How many beliefs do you have that you're truly able to peel back, get rid of all the emotion, look at it logically, How many of those beliefs do you have that you would basically say, you know what, maybe I'm thinking wrong? Once I start to ask myself these critical thinking questions, maybe I'm not thinking correctly on this. And then once you take those beliefs, what are they holding you back from? Are they preventing you from doing other things because they're tied to a feel good that your Aunt Susie told you about 30 years ago, drunk at a Christmas party? Think about the dots, guys. I'm not here to upset you. I'm just here to try to put those dots upside down and peel back the emotion. Next slide should be the levels, I believe, the levels of thinking. Okay, so I train a lot on this, and everybody says, all right, Eric, all right, we have negative thinking, positive thinking, critical thinking. Which level should we be thinking in? And where should we spend the majority of our time? And that's a difficult question. Okay, so when I deliver my programs and people ask me, Eric, which one should I be spending the most time in? You tell me, Eric. And you can't answer that question, but each one serves a purpose. I will tell you this, there are two major problems with the first two levels of thinking. Negative thinking and positive thinking. First off, each one does provide benefit. People say, well, what's negative thinking? Why would that provide a benefit? I'll give you a benefit. I live in Baltimore. It's a wonderful city. I love it. It's great. I love it. If I walk down the wrong street, the wrong time of night, and walk into the wrong bar and tell them, hey, buddy, put on some Justin Bieber and give me a fruity drink with an umbrella, I'm going to get my butt kicked. Okay, so being realistic here is a very important piece of this. We're thinking that everything's pie in the sky and wonderful. Okay, that's great for certain situations, but here's the problem with the first two levels, guys. Negative thinking and positive thinking are both driven by an emotion. So whether we're thinking negatively or whether we're thinking positively is normally tied to the emotion that we're experiencing at that time. It's normally tied to how we feel after we leave a conversation. Every single conversation you have with somebody, you're going to leave that person, and you yourself are going to leave that conversation feeling one of 5 different emotions: happiness, sadness, anger, fear, or shame. Every single conversation you have. So if you're thinking negatively or positively is tied to an emotion, do you see how that can lead to bad things? Your mindset is going to be based off of prior interactions you've had, which are all tied to emotions. The third level up, critical thinking. This is decision-making based on greater criteria devoid of emotion. That is the definition of critical thinking. Decision-making based on greater criteria devoid of emotion. This is fact-based, guys. There is no emotion involved. So to ask which one of those 3 you should be in is very difficult. If you're in surgery with someone, would you not say critical thinking is probably the best place to be? Critical thinking is probably a good place to be if you're in there operating on somebody. Flip the coin. If you're at home dealing with your spouse, has critical thinking ever worked? Does critical thinking ever work when you're dealing with your spouse? It never works because we don't think logically. We don't think logically in those situations. So it's very difficult. The emphasis on this is to know which level you're currently operating from. The majority of us are not aware of it. We don't know which level we're in. If we don't know how to act. So if we have an interaction that causes us to be fueled in emotion, it triggers us. If we're triggered in a conversation we had just had, we're going to carry those feelings over to our next conversation. We're going to carry that back to our office to deal with our staff. When we get back there and we talk to the receptionist and we bite her head off because she just asked how your day went and you sat in traffic and you blew up at her, whatever it is. But if we're aware of the level of thinking, we're better able to control the emotion. I can't emphasize this enough, guys, when it comes to emotion. It is not about eliminating. It's not about turning it off. It's not about ignoring it. It's about controlling it. We are not good at controlling emotions. We prove it daily when we allow ourselves to get upset, to get worked up, to get angry at people, to lash out. Your field requires you to remain very, you have to compartmentalize, nonstop compartmentalization. You all know this term. One thing cannot bleed over to the other thing. One thing that just happened cannot bleed over into another thing. If you don't know where you're thinking and why you're thinking, how you're thinking, there's no way you're going to be able to control it. We can go to the next slide here. This is my smile factor, guys. I'm a former Marine, okay? Former Marines, I can hardly read or write. So I need acronyms. Acronyms get me through. They're what pulls me through. This is an acronym I came up, and I'll be honest with you. Prior to my wife's brain aneurysm, I'd come up with this. I knew what I wanted to write my book on. I knew what I wanted to do. But being in that hospital for 14 days and dealing with nurses and doctors and anybody else that came through there, this really, for me, confirmed my acronym. And I call it SMILE. And I know it sounds cheesy, guys, okay? I know it sounds like rainbows and Skittles. You know, I do a lot of media. I do a lot of television. And I can always see the host like laughing like, oh, smile factor. Guys, this is the way we connect with people. Okay. We're talking about this from a leadership standpoint. We're talking about this from a medical field standpoint. This applies to every part of our lives. This smile factor I came up with, again, sounds a little bit pie in the sky, but follow me on this. When you meet somebody, you should be making them feel these things. This is how we connect with people. We should be showing them respect, simple respect. You guys call this bedside manner, right? It's showing people respect, not just yes, sir, no, ma'am. I'm talking about eye contact, making them feel like you're paying attention to them, not cutting them off, letting them finish a statement. Make it all about me. I want you to feel like all emphasis is on me. I understand you have other things going on. I know you have other people you have to deal with. I want to feel like I'm the only person alive in that world. And it's not that difficult to do. It's giving somebody just basic attention. Make me feel important. Okay, guys are horrible. Guys are horrible at this. Make me feel important. I think I'm important. You think you're important. If you can put all emphasis on someone, if you can try to find common ground with them, making them feel important makes them feel like, you know what? I really am a human. I really am someone that they care about. Make me laugh. This is the easiest one. Okay, again, I do lots of media on this. They're like, Eric, well, that's easy. That's simple. But we don't do it anymore. I call it the outrage society, right? We don't like to laugh anymore. Everybody's angry. Everybody's upset. Making people laugh is the easiest, simplest way to communicate, to connect, and we don't do it. Why? Because we're angry. We're automatically assuming the worst intentions in people. We should assume the best intentions in people. The last one, earn my trust. This is difficult, obviously, and in your field especially, I will tell you this, in your field, this is difficult, but it is critical because you do need to build trust. And I can tell you one of the best ways I've found that this works. And again, in your field, it's a little more difficult, but earning trust, I believe, is best and easiest accomplished when you make the other person feel like you trust them. They want to reciprocate. Okay, so if I come to you and say, I'm going to tell you my deep dark, not really a deep dark secret, but if I'm going to tell you something that is personal, you hear that, you know it's personal, you feel like you want to give back. You feel like, you know what, Eric trusts me, I should trust him back. So the earning trust piece of this is difficult. It's very hard to do because you can't do it on day one. This smile factor, guys, this is something, and I'm pushing this everywhere I go, every company I talk to, every association I go to. I'm pushing this in the medical field. This smile factor should be plastered. Because I'm telling you right now, if you're able to do this for every person you meet, and it's simple stuff. This is not difficult rocket science stuff, okay? This is pretty simple stuff. And you have to be authentic. You have to be real. This cannot be fake. But this smile factor, I'm a little biased here. It's what I do. I believe this smile factor really is the key to us getting back to a loving society, loving our neighbors. I don't know if you guys have watched The Lion King, right? Kuna Matata. It means no worries. Guys, everything is emotional intelligence. Everything we do revolves around it. If you think you're good at emotional intelligence, my suggestion to you would be to reach out, talk to some of your family members, talk to some of your close people, and ask them. Be honest with me. When you communicate with me, when you talk to me, what do you feel about me? What do you think about me? Do you think I'm polite? Do you think I'm kind? Normally your family members will give you the absolute best information you can. But I will leave you with this, and I think this is what needs to be verbalized because I think this kind of gets lost out there. Medicine is a science. Emotion is an art. In your field especially, there needs to be a way to mesh those two together. It's like the issue right now with coronavirus, right? We have the political piece of it. We have the medical piece of it. The two together are like oil and water. In your field on a daily basis, these two things are constantly at each other. You have the medical side, which is quantifiable, ABC 1, 2, 3. But then you have the emotional piece, the need to connect with the people that you're communicating with, the need to make them feel trusted, the need to make them feel comfortable. Again, the same way I felt when my neurosurgeon looked at me in the eyes. I remember that like yesterday. I felt his compassion. I felt him for me. I felt like he was looking out for my kids. It was the most amazing feeling ever, guys. The smile factor, we got to live it. We got to breathe it, guys. You're going to see me on national television talking about smile. So you're getting the upfront on this, all right? You're getting the one up on this. Paula, I think I got my 20 minutes there, I believe. That's 20 minutes is tough for me.
You did. And this topic has such a wide breadth and you really, it's unfortunate we only had a few minutes with you because you're just so infectious, as TJ was telling me earlier. So one of the things I had a question about was, what, in your opinion, do you think is the characteristic of EI that's most difficult to master? And what suggestions would you have for leaders to overcome those difficulties, such as your drunken emotion analogy?
That's an awesome question, Paul. I would say, so someone I'd refer to as being high in emotional intelligence would possess a few things: self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skill. Those 5 pillars make up someone who's strong in emotional intelligence. I would have to say the one that is the most difficult and the one that is most lacking right now is the self-awareness piece. As a society, we are not aware of the impacts of the words we say, of what we do. We don't realize how that's impacting other people. To be self-aware is not just to be aware of our own emotions, but also the impacts they have on other people. It's how we perceive, express, and respond to emotion, but not just ours, but to other people as well. That's where the breakdown is, I think, because people feel like, well, I'm aware of my emotions, but what they're not aware of is the impact they have on other people. So the answer to your question would be the one that I feel is most lacking, is the most critical one. If you said, which one should I focus on? It would be the self-awareness piece.
Okay, great. Christina, do you have a question?
I do. So Eric, thank you for the amazing message. We are privileged to have you in our presence today. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.